Welcome, spicy ladies. How to be a better Sigma female, a survival guide. Being a Sigma female isn't about trying to be different. It's about realizing you already are. You never quite fit into society's mold, and for years you may have wondered if something was wrong with you. But here's the truth. You weren't lost. You were evolving. In your 20s, you played along. You tried to be what the world expected, whether that was in relationships, career, or the way you carried yourself. But deep down, you knew it didn't fit. By 30, that illusion shatters. You stop chasing validation and start owning who you are. And by 40, you become a force unlike most. You don't peak early and fade away. You get stronger and more untouchable with time. Society tells women that their best years are in their youth. That's a lie meant to keep you insecure. Your true power awakens when you stop caring about their rules. By 30, you're cutting off people who drain you. By 40, they don't even try. By 30, you're building your independence. By 40, your answer to no one. You don't just live life, you dominate it. So if you've ever felt behind, know this, you're exactly where you need to be. Your best years aren't gone, they're just beginning, and if you're ready to step into that power, watch this video because the real journey starts now. Let's get started, spicy ladies. Number 1, she's selective with her energy. And it drives people crazy. There was a time when she gave too much patience, too much attention, too much of herself, to people who only knew how to take. Over-explained and overcompensated for people who never once met her halfway. Not anymore. By 30, she starts filtering. By 40, she's mastered the art of selective energy. Not everyone gets access to her anymore. Not everyone deserves her time, her thoughts, or her presence. And that shift, it drives people crazy. They don't understand why she suddenly seems distant, why she doesn't respond instantly, why she no longer jumps when they need her. The people who once drained her now feel her absence like a missing limb. They realize too late that her attention was never an obligation, it was a gift. And here's the truth, she's not cold, she's calculated. She no longer pours into empty cups. She doesn't entertain shallow conversations, tolerate one-sided relationships, or give energy to people who refuse to evolve. If she gives you her time, her presence, her thoughts, you better appreciate it because it's rare. This isn't arrogance, it's alignment. She understands that energy is currency, and she's not spending it on things that don't serve her anymore. She knows that not everyone deserves a front-row seat to her life, and so she moves differently. She listens more than she speaks. She observes before she engages. She disappears from environments that don't match her frequency. People will call her distant, mysterious, even selfish. But she doesn't care because while they're busy wondering why she pulled away, she's busy protecting her peace. Her energy is a privilege, not a right. If that bothers people, that's their problem, not hers. Number 2, she becomes the woman she needed in her 20s. In her 20s, she felt lost, conflicted, torn between who she was and who the world expected her to be. She second-guessed herself, questioned her worth, and sometimes tolerated things she knew she shouldn't just to keep the peace. She looked around for guidance, for a role model who truly understood her. Someone who wouldn't tell her to shrink herself, compromise, or follow the traditional script. But no one like that showed up. So she had to become her own guide. By 30, the confusion fades. By 40, she is the woman she desperately needed when she was younger. When she was younger, she no longer looks for outside approval. She stands firm in her boundaries, her choices, and her identity. She moves through life with a level of confidence and clarity that would have saved her younger self years of heartache. She doesn't just keep this wisdom to herself. She quietly becomes a source of strength for others. Younger women notice. They see her independence, her self-respect, her ability to live life on her terms, and even if they don't say it out loud, they're watching and realizing. They don't have to settle either. She isn't just survive, she's thriving, and that is what makes all the struggle worth it. Because now, when she looks in the mirror, she doesn't see the lost girl she used to be. She sees the powerhouse she was always meant to become. Number 3, she owns her financial independence. Like a fortress. In her 20s, she saw how the world treats women who depend on others. She watched as women stayed in toxic relationships because they couldn't afford to leave. She noticed how some partners, family, Even friends used money as a leash, controlling others through financial dependence. She swore that would never be her. By 30, she's not waiting for a partner, an inheritance, or a stroke of luck to secure her lifestyle. She's building her own foundation. She's learning how to make and multiply her money. She's ditching the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle and making moves that give her options. She invests in her future, not just in savings, but in knowledge, skills, and assets that give her long-term security. By 40, she's fully independent. She doesn't ask for financial freedom, she owns it. That kind of self-sufficiency makes her untouchable. She's never in a position where she has to tolerate disrespect, just to keep a roof over her head. She's never manipulated into staying in a situation because she can't afford to leave. She's never forced to choose between survival and self-respect. Men notice this too. The weak ones are intimidated. They realize they have nothing to offer her if their only currency is money. The strong ones respect it, knowing that if she chooses them, it's not out of need but desire. Her financial independence is her fortress. It protects her from desperation, manipulation, from settling. It allows her to move through life on her terms, and that's a power very few people, men or women, ever achieve. But before I give you more signs today, let me request you spicy ladies to hit that subscribe button. Please do it right now if you love my content, if you love what I do. I bless your heart. Number 4. She's done trying to fix or inspire broken men. In her 20s, she thought love meant patience. She believed in potential. She thought that if she just loved hard enough, supported him enough, or understood him enough, he would eventually rise to the occasion. She gave chances. She excused red flags. She poured her energy into men who were still figuring themselves out, emotionally lost, financially unstable, or mentally stuck in a cycle of self-doubt. She believed she could inspire them to be better. By 30, that illusion is gone. She finally sees the pattern. Men who need fixing don't actually want to be fixed. They want comfort, not accountability. They want her to heal them without them having to do the work. They love the idea of a strong woman beside them, but resent the reality of what that requires. So she stops. She's not a rehab center for emotionally immature men. She's not a life coach for an adult who refuses to grow. If he hasn't figured himself out by now, that's his problem. By 40, these types of men don't even approach her anymore. They can sense that she's not the one. She's too solid, too self-assured, too unwilling to play therapist for a grown man who refuses to evolve. Instead, she attracts men who have already done the work, the ones who don't need fixing because they've already fixed themselves. And if she doesn't find a man who meets her standards, she's perfectly fine on her own because she would rather walk alone than waste another second trying to build a man from scratch. She's done with potential. She's only interested in proof. Number 5. She's no longer searching. She's found herself. In her 20s, she was constantly questioning her choices, her path, even herself. She was searching for answers, trying to understand where she belonged, who she was supposed to be, and what the world expected of her. Every mistake felt like a setback. Every turn made her doubt herself. She thought she had to find herself out there, in relationships, in jobs, in experiences. But by 30, the confusion starts to fade. She realizes something powerful. She was never lost to begin with the world. The world just tried to make her forget who she was. By now, she's done playing the guessing game. She's no longer looking for permission to exist on her own terms. She's no longer waiting for external validation to feel worthy. She knows what she wants, what she doesn't, and most importantly, who she is. And by 40, she's unshakable. She stands so firmly in her identity that nothing and no one can rattle her. She no longer feels the need to explain herself to prove herself or change herself to fit someone else's standards. She walks through life with a quiet certainty. This is me. Take it or leave it. People notice this shift. Some admire it. Others fear it because when a woman truly knows herself, she becomes unpredictable, untouchable, and impossible to manipulate. She's no longer desperate for answers because she carries them within her. She's no longer searching for a place to belong because she is the home she was looking for all along. And the most ironic part, the moment she stops seeking validation, the world starts craving her presence. The moment she stops looking for love, the right people show up. The moment she stops trying to fit in, she becomes unforgettable. She has nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to fear. She's arrived, and she's not going anywhere. Number 6. Her beauty becomes more intimidating, not less. Most women are taught to fear aging, to see every wrinkle as a countdown, and every birthday as a reminder that their value is fading. But a Sigma female, she doesn't buy into that nonsense. She knows something deeper. Real beauty doesn't lie in youth. It's in presence, and presence that only gets stronger with time. In her 20s, she was still figuring herself out. She had beauty, sure, but it was raw, unshaped, often misunderstood. She might have felt the pressure to fit in, to be likable, to soften herself so she doesn't come across as too much. But by 30, that phase is over. She's not chasing youth, she's cultivating power. She walks differently, more sure of herself. She speaks with precision, not hesitation. She knows how to hold eye contact just long enough to make someone uncomfortable, not because she's trying to, but because most people aren't used to facing a woman who sees through them. And by 40, her beauty is downright intimidating. Not because she's trying to impress anyone, but because she no longer needs to. She radiates something rare, self-possession, and that makes her dangerous. Unlike others who scramble to stay relevant, she refines herself like a blade, sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Number 7. Psychological armor becomes bulletproof. In your 20s, life threw its punches, betrayals from people you trusted, failures that made you question yourself, harsh lessons that left scars. Back then, every hit hurt you felt deeply. Maybe too deeply. You let people in too easily. You believed words over actions. You gave too many second chances. But by 30, something shifts. You stop bleeding over old wounds. You stop replaying painful memories. You stop feeling guilty for cutting off toxic people. You learn that not everyone deserves access to you. And by 40, you become unshakable. The tricks that used to work on you, manipulation, guilt trips, emotional traps, you see right through them now. You recognize when someone is trying to pull your strings, and you don't react. Instead of getting drawn into drama, you observe. Instead of justifying yourself, you let people believe whatever they want, instead of proving your worth. You let your actions speak. Your psychological armor is bulletproof. People who once drained you can't even get close. Guilty trippers and manipulators don't even bother trying anymore. They can sense their games won't work, and if someone does try, you shut it down without a second thought because you've learned something powerful. Peace is priceless, and you use it to let anyone take it from you. Number 8. She stops apologizing for being unconventional. There was a time when she felt the pressure, when society's voice was louder than her own. When are you getting married? Don't you want kids? You should have a stable career by now. Everyone had an opinion as if her life was a group project, and they had a say in the outcome. In her 20s, she tried to explain herself. She justified her choices, softened her edges, and even questioned whether she was the problem. Why didn't she crave the traditional milestones the way others did? Why did the idea of a scripted life, kids, 9 to 5 until retirement, feel like a slow suffocation instead of a dream? But by 30, the guilt fades. By 40, it's gone. She no longer explains, she chooses. Marriage, maybe, if it's on her terms. Kids, perhaps, but only if she truly wants them. Not because the world expects it. A corporate job, sure, if it fuels her ambition, but she refuses to be a slave to a paycheck. She's not rebelling, she's simply choosing her own path rather than blindly obeying someone else's. And that kind of freedom, it unsettles people. They want her to want what they want. It makes them uncomfortable that she doesn't need the same things to feel complete. Some will judge, some will whisper, and some will try to convince her she'll regret it later. But she won't be there to explain because she doesn't owe them that. She's ruthless about this because she understands something most people don't. Energy is everything. It affects her mindset, her creativity, her peace. If someone constantly drains her, whether through negativity, manipulation, or sheer neediness, she refuses to stick around and suffer. She doesn't play games. She doesn't wait for people to change. She just walks away. And that's why she's unpredictable. People assume they have endless access to her. They assume she'll tolerate them, that she'll keep explaining herself, that she'll stay. But she won't. The second they become a liability to her well-being, she's gone, and there's no coming back. Some will call her cold, Some will say she's heartless, but deep down, they know she was right to leave. She's not here to carry dead weight. She's not here to explain basic respect and balance to grown adults. She's here to protect her peace. Number 9. She controls her own narrative. People have always tried to define her. In her 20s, they called her too independent, too distant, or too complicated. They assumed she was cold because she didn't chase approval. They misread her silence as weakness, and her strength as arrogance. At first, she tried to correct them. She explained herself, hoping they'd see the real her. But no matter how much she clarified, people still saw what they wanted to see. That's when she realized something powerful. It's not her job to manage other people's perceptions. By 30, she stops defending herself. By 40, she owns her mystique. Let them talk, let them guess, let them assume. They know her no longer wastes energy correcting the wrong people. Instead, she decides what part of her story is known and what remains a mystery. Some people crave attention. She craves control. She reveals herself in layers, but only to those who have earned the right to know her. To the world, she may seem unpredictable, unreadable, even intimidating. That's fine. She'd rather be a mystery than an open book for just anyone to skim through. She understands that people fear what they can't define, and that's exactly why she remains undefined. This isn't about playing games, it's about protecting herself. She refuses to hand over the script of her life for others to rewrite. She is the author, the narrator, and the editor of her own story, and that kind of self-possession unsettles people, but she doesn't care because the moment she stopped explaining, justifying, and defending, she won. Number 10. She's the last person you should underestimate. She doesn't brag. She doesn't seek validation. She doesn't need the world to know what she's working on. That's exactly why people assume she's just chilling big mistake. She moves in silence. While others waste time performing, she observes. While they show off, she builds. While they talk, by the time they realize what she's done, it's too late. She's already 10 steps ahead. People have underestimated her for years. They mistook her quietness for inaction. They assumed that because she wasn't loud, she wasn't capable. They thought that just because she wasn't constantly announcing her goals, she didn't have any. By 30, she starts proving them wrong. By 40, she doesn't even need to her life speak for itself. The ones who underestimated her now see the results. The confidence, the independence, the success that seemed to come out of nowhere except it didn't. It was years in the making, carefully crafted behind closed doors, and now she watches as the same people who dismissed her suddenly respect her. Some admire her, some envy her, some regret underestimating her. But here's the thing, she doesn't care anymore. She never worked hard for their approval, she did it for herself. So while they sit there in shock, she keeps moving, still silent, still strategic, still 3 steps ahead. Number 11. She's no longer playing society's rigged game. In her 20s, she did what she was supposed to do. She smiled when she didn't feel like it. She softened her words to avoid making others uncomfortable. She entertained relationships, friendships, and careers that didn't fully align with her, just because she was told this is what you're supposed to do. She played along, thinking that if she just followed the script, get the degree, get the job, be agreeable, be nice, maybe find a partner, she would eventually feel fulfilled. But somewhere along the way, the cracks started showing. She noticed how society rewards obedience, not intelligence. How women are subtly pressured to put everyone else's needs before their own. How the idea of settling down is often just a nicer way of saying settling for less. By the time she hits 30, something inside her snaps, not in a loud, rebellious way, but in a quiet, unshakable realization. This game is rigged, and I'm done playing it. She stops seeking approval from people who don't even understand her. She no longer twists herself into a shape that fits their expectations. She walks away from relationship ships that drain her. She abandons the idea that she needs to be liked to be valuable. And the best part, she starts playing life her way, on her terms. She doesn't rush into a marriage just because time is ticking. She doesn't tolerate jobs that suffocate her just because they look good on paper. She doesn't shrink herself to make others comfortable. Instead, she builds. She experiments. She creates a life that actually feels right to her, not one that just looks right from the outside. And that's when the real magic happens, When she stops being a pawn in someone else's game and becomes the one making the rules. Final words. The best chapter of your life is just beginning. If you're a Sigma female, understand this. You were never meant to peak in your 20s. That was just the warm-up. The real game starts at 30. By 40, you're unstoppable. You've shed the expectations that once weighed you down. You no longer explain, justify, or shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You've lost people, but you've gained clarity. You've walked away from places you didn't belong, only to build a world where you do most. Most people fear getting older. You embrace it because with every year, you become more powerful, more self-assured, and more untouchable. Society may try to convince women that their value fades with time, but you know better. Yours only increases. By 30, you stop asking for permission. By 40, you move like a force of nature. And here's the best part, you're just getting started. So if you've ever doubted yourself, if you've ever felt like you were behind, you're not. You are simply growing into the woman you were always meant to be, the kind who controls her own fate, rewrites the rules, and refuses to be defined by anything but her own standards. This is your time, own it, and if this resonated with you, don't just stop here. Watch the full video because your journey isn't over, it's only beginning. Stay true to yourself. To all the spicy ladies, make life beautiful. See you in our next video.